what bothers me the most is that when you look at our political landscape, all that you perceive is a cavalcade of morally leprous actors. Actors who do not have the capacity, as it were, to understand the magnitude, the scale of what is required to deliver in the office that they seek to operate from. So that saddens me. People who have not been able to tame and domesticate their interest, those who have not been able to sublimate this interest to duty, which is the overall. Individuals who, imponderable as their individual ambitions may seem, who have not been able to appreciate that the Nigerian project is much greater and larger, and it is to that all of the sacrifices should be made. This is my worry, because whatever direction you turn, all that you see is that you are relating with persons who are head in the vice of their own hoggish proclivities. And so, for me, it's a very serious challenge which tends to sap the confidence that one has.
Is it a hopeless situation?
Well, it cannot be hopeless if the people who ought to be real participants in this affair are playing the role they should play. Because if you were a participant in a particular event and you are ignored, it will mean that you are not participating. And the capacity for the one who had invited you or who tries to deny you participation to do so is when he appreciates that he's dealing with a set of patrons. So if we're able to shake off our whatever of cowardice, I think we now will begin to say, yes, this is what we own, and we are ready to be protective of the project.
What specifically do you expect in terms of this participation that you so eloquently talked about of the people that can make a difference or that should really excite us on the road to 2019, especially participation by the people?
Yeah, the level of participation is you move out from the periphery into the core, believing that this is your project, believing that it is not alien to you, believing that whoever is participating is doing you no favor. Is doing no favor because it is a trust. And whatever represents the object of trust must be managed on behalf and for the good of those on which that trust object is exercised. And so the very moment the fellow either treats it with levity or wants to appropriate it and to relate with it in a way that is suggestive of, I could do whatever it is I want with it, then there is a serious problem when those for whom that trust represents something maintain an attitude of taciturnity. So there ought to be the issue of real engagement, positive engagement, not being sentimental or emotional, engagement in a way that you will have to make those persons who participate, who exercise this authority to be ready to render account. Say, you are accountable to us. Yeah. You are our servant doing our bidding. We sent you on an errand. So if you are not humbled by the task that is given, if you do not appreciate, you are not grateful for the trust that is being given, then there is no way you are not likely to betray that trust. And so those who gave it, once they do not find these attributes with the individual who would exercise that on their behalf, they reserve the duty and responsibility of saying, give back to us what we gave to you.
Do you think that the people have been so emasculated to the point that their level of participation or capacity to participate has dwindled?
Well, this is the harrowing aspect of it, that they have become so enfeebled by issues that are driven by primordial sentiment, issues that are not even core to their own survival. They do not look at issues from an objective perspective. They look at issues from even the perspective of what benefits me, not what serves the interest of the larger society. And so, to that extent, they are susceptible to manipulation. And so those who occupy the position of leadership take advantage of the knowledge they have of their susceptibility to do the manipulation.
What's your assessment of the level of engagement by political parties, then of course individual at different levels of aspirations, institutions of government saddled with the responsibility of engaging the people to be able to empower them to be able to participate effectively? What's your assessment?
I would say zero.
On all counts?
At all level, zero. Because the people, to these categories of persons you have mentioned, the people do not count. They do not count. And of course, you don't blame them. Because they know that the people themselves have rendered themselves enfeebled by all of those issues we have raised. And so to that extent, why do I dissipate my resources and time over a man who had demonstrated in clear terms that he's ready to do my biddings when I ought to be the one doing the biddings? And so that is the challenge that we have.
If you just join us, you're watching Road to 2019 on independent television on our satellite channel, Go TV, channel 107, and Star Times channel 130. You can also watch us via live stream on our website at www.itvradio.nigeria.com/live stream. The focus of our discussion, our conversation this week is on the comment made by President Muhammadu Buhari responding to his critics in recent times. We have that clip. We'll just take an excerpt of it, and then we'll be back to look at the content of that clip when it is ready. But I'm sure you'll see that in a moment. But let's just look at something of general interest. I read, yesterday about the Amnesty's reports on allegations being made by victims of the insurgency in the Northeast, particularly those in IDP camps, how those who are supposed to protect them are taking undue advantage of them. They are abusing, especially women. Many of them are compelled to submit because they want to avoid hunger. And somehow the level of response that we've seen from government is not something that is really commendable, according to some analysts. And this is not the first time that Amnesty International will make such a remark or produce such a report about what is happening in the Northeast. I don't know how much of this you followed up in recent times.
I did. The truth of the matter is there can be no more harrowing situation than one who suffers displacement. The fellow is completely in a state of despondency, utter hopelessness. And so it takes those who are real human to be solicitous for those categories of persons. But what you find over time is that a number of those who relate with these persons take advantage of their untoward situation. The House of Representatives recently was conducting a public whatever probe. How far that will go, I do not know. It was talking about what NEMA was supposed to do with those persons. Do not again forget that it was the same IDP issue, even when the amnesty had not come, that cost the XY Secretary to Government of the Federation the job. Hundreds of millions was said to have been appropriated for glass clearing for a people who were being rendered useless by hunger. They were hungry. They would have preferred to be beaten by snakes, assuming those grasses were harboring snakes, than to die on instrumental basis from the pang of hunger. These were resources that were siphoned. The initial reaction, of course, was that it didn't happen, but ultimately the fellow left. To the best of my knowledge, if he only had to go with that money and go home and you ask not to sin anymore, then we are not doing enough. Because some persons had died, some persons had suffered irreversible whatever humiliation, deprivation on account of this. And so when you look at those who are said to have abused these persons, we have stories in custodies. Females have been abused. Some have been cashed out from their job because these facts were established. So how do we deny? Do not again forget that some of the army guys who operate in the whatever are not operating under the best of conditions. There are some who have been there for as long as the war started. And so there is the fatigue. there is the complete hopelessness. It's like they've been there with so many other of their colleagues.
But that's what they signed. That's what they signed into. I mean, is that justification?
It's not what that was.
Isn't that what they signed into?
They are human beings.
Yes.
Why they were signing into that didn't mean that the state would not provide for them. Didn't mean that you will play politics with their life. There are some persons who will never be posted there. There are persons who will never be posted there because they have those who are high up there. And so the very moment they are there, you move them out. Now you post persons there. If I sign to die, for example, it's not the same thing as signing to commit suicide. So provide the necessary implements for the individual to work. All of this will not. I'm not saying that that's a justificatory basis. When that does happen, you expect that the first reaction of the government will be that yes, it is possible. If we had 1,100, 500 persons managing the affairs of these persons, we could expect that. I'll give you one example. When the man who was director of NEMA was asked a question, the response was insulting. Because he said, he was asked that there was an NGO that had intended to donate food items to the IDPs in the Northeast. Now, you took 5,000 metric tons of what had already been paid for by government. You gave to the same NGO to distribute. We wanted to see the logic of this. He said, oh, the NGO wanted to buy foreign rice because we wanted to patronize the local market. And so we said, don't buy. If you were saying don't buy, why didn't you direct them to the market?
To buy.
To buy. Why were you giving the 5,000 or whatever metric tons of whatever rice that you gave? So what was the logic of this? And how were you to classify that as a gift coming from them? Were you giving, did you have the challenge of logistics of how to take them there? Were they helping you at that level? But you see, all of these were the fraud. And so many big names. These are names that will come, donate 1 billion, and you clap for them for act of philanthropy. See? But billions of nairas, naira was spirited away by this same category of persons. They have not concluded. They are joined sin and die. We hope they will return there. They may never return. Meanwhile, the victims are suffering.
Okay, now just building up the conversation today on the program Road to 2019 on ITV Satellite, Star Times Channel 130, Go TV Channel 107, with yours sincerely, Sonny Duke Okosun. Just earlier this week, President Muhammadu Buhari reacted for the first time to all the criticism. Okay, let's say some critical aspects of the criticisms that have trailed his administration. Of course, you remember the famous letter written by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and that was followed up by another coming from former military head of state, former military president, General Babangida, as it were. And but specifically, it seems to have found solace in the $16 billion spent allegedly on the power sector, and then he kept on asking the question, where is the power? Okay, so this seems to be a change from the style of Mr. President in responding to his critics. Is it a little bit too late?
Well, I recall that the last time he was in the UK, he said when the first letter came, he did not respond, except that some of his ministers said there was a need. It is not in all situations that silence could be golden. And so the Minister for Information took the burden of having to explain in a very mild, in the most polite manner, to say, oh, the ex-president didn't understand X, Y, Z. Now, when the ex-president persisted, he probably felt that now is the time.
I want to my cap in my hand. I say, why?
To begin to respond. And why is he responding now?
Only that.
You see, when we look at the ex-president,
you know more than I do the condition of the road.
we need to ask
some of them were not prepared,
a fundamental question, which is that does it lie in its mouth to decide how many terms anybody after him would run?
From here
he did 2 terms, and he wanted the third one. It doesn't matter how much he denies. He really wanted the third one, invested in it, except that the project was killed. Who has given him the platform to speak on behalf of Nigerians? We're in a democracy. What qualifies him, for example? Because for a number of...
Well, he didn't say he was speaking for Nigerians.
No. You see, invariably, that was basically what he was doing. He said that to Jonathan. You promised you would do 110. If Jonathan had that promise with you, that was between you and Jonathan. If Nigerians felt that Jonathan was good enough to run another 10, who were you to come tell us that he promised 110? To you or to who? So these are the issues. Why do you become so desperate that he couldn't do a second term? Why do you become so desperate to speak on behalf of Nigerians? Why are you spoon-feeding us? You did too. So if he did that letter, it had become a pattern. And what had the accusation always been? That you failed. Unfortunately, Jonathan didn't respond. And if he did respond, responded too weakly and very lately. Now, Buhari perhaps is beginning to say, who are you to talk about what people have not done? Let us now begin to look at you. Because all that we see when we look at you is that we are seeing a moral cadaver. That's basically what you are, a moral leper. So who are you to pontificate on the issue of morality or the quality of governance? How and where did you deliver? If $16 billion, do not forget that it's not the first to raise the issue of 16 billion. The House of Rep had done that before. That cost Elumelu, whatever. Elumelu was, of course, he suffered a set-up and the rest is history. We never saw the light of the day. And so there had been the issue of aliboting. Obasanjo would go on pirating how Atiku was the criminal, how the this was that. So you became the saint, presiding over people who were criminals, and you were not able to check these persons. And so, we have a number of issues. When we now have this, and all I expect is, okay, fine, 16 billion had been spent. If the present administration, for example, is saying we have 7,000 megawatts of electricity generated, but we are unable to evacuate. We can't evacuate because the transmission lines are weak. And it is the bulk of this money went into building the transmission whatever line that we do not see. So all that we need to get is to say this. At different corners, including those who are implacable of adversaries of Mr. President, have again challenged the integrity of Obasanjo when the likes of Ayose said, the 10 million you made me as governor then to contribute to your library, together with the 35 other states of the Federation, is a debt you are owing because we were browbeaten into contributing that. It was not voluntarily given. So you built a library. Okay. You built a university. Where did the fund come from? We knew how impecunious you were when you went into. How much were you paid? The roads were in a dilapidated state. So it's not as if, we did X, Y, Z. When Yaradua, Jonathan, and others came, they crumbled off all of this. Oil subsidy. We've been on that with resources that were more than enough, more than sufficient to build times 10 of the refineries that we have. And all of this had challenged us gaining the backward-forward linkage that any economy requires to bring about growth and ultimate development. So 8 solid years. What do we have to point at? Okay,
let me just proceed there. I'll come back to you in a moment. Let's take an excerpt of this comment by President Muhammadu Buhari while addressing the Buhari support group in Abuja recently. He used the opportunity very well, very well, in responding to some of the criticisms that have trailed his administration in recent time. Take a listen.
On top of other things in the institution, educational, medical care, and so on, you know the road. You know the rail was killed. And one of the former heads of state, between that time, was bragging that he spent more than 15 billion American dollars, not naira, on power. Where is the power? Where is the power? And now we have to pay the debt. And this year's and last year's budget I took to the National Assembly was the highest in capital projects, more than 1.3 trillion naira. let anybody come and confront me publicly in the National Assembly. What have they been doing? Some of them have been there for 10 years. What have they been doing? So really, this country, luckily for me, I said it about 20 years ago, that we have no other country than Nigeria. We should remain here and salvage it together. No matter.
Okay, just an excerpt of that clip, courtesy Channels Television, where Mr. President responded to some of the criticisms that have trailed him and his administration in recent times. I mean, just looking at that video, looks like someone who was very aggressive in his response. This is very unusual of Mr. President. You want to say something about that?
Well, you could see the anger was there. Again, what one had expected is that for me, if I were in his shoes, I will continue to allow my ministers to do that and don't get distracted by this. One of the qualities I think a leader should have is the capacity for toleration. Yes, he has said what he needed to say about you. Allow those who would explain to explain. And again, do not act as if you were a coward. If we honestly, after 3 years down the line, are beginning to say that we are paying for things that we did not see, and meanwhile money was appropriated, we want to see courage on the part of Mr. President to say, whoever had mismanaged resources, because the oath of office was that no fear, no favor. Whoever had mismanaged resources, no matter how highly placed or whatever, we deal with you. Look at countries like Korea, Malaysia, ex-president, ex-this have been dealt with on corruption charges. So Nigerians will be excited if they see that those who before now were said to be sacred cows, the untouchable, have been made to come and render account for what they did or they did not do well, for their acts of omission or commission. I think that would have become more pleasing than what will appear as, for me, ego massaging. So you've said this to me, I will tell the world what you are. It does not demonstrate, in my own opinion, the kind of intrepidity that is required on the part of leadership and the political will to deal decisively with issues, particularly when one of the core platform upon which his administration is, the edifice of his administration is predicated, is the whole issue of fighting corruption. So if you are, by implication, saying that 16-point-something billion US dollars is not the first, do a peregrination into history, it has become a recurring issue. It's like a diabetic soul. Where is the power? We are in darkness in spite. We have seen countries like South Africa and others who have spent less than 1/3 of that money, and today they are everywhere. The absence of power is responsible for a number of the drawbacks that we are experiencing. So if in the wisdom of ex-President Obasanjo, he felt that there was the need for us to tackle power, and today there are insinuations that rather than tackle power, we got more darkness at a higher cost. Okay. Somebody fighting corruption should find the courage to say, please, we need an explanation. Come render an account of your embassy. Okay. If not in the totality of the area where you exercise power, let at least narrow it down to this issue of power.
Okay. In your earlier presentation, before we took that excerpt, it would seem like you were probably taking a swipe at former President Olusegun Obasanjo for the comments and the letters he wrote to President Muhammadu Buhari, which some would describe as being tantamount to throwing away the baby and the bathwater. Isn't that the way it seems?
No, I am not throwing water and the baby away. If there are issues about the administration of Buhari we want to talk about, yes, we could. You see, sometimes, if I were to serve you a sumptuous meal using what the pole that a child would excrete on, no matter how hungry you are not likely going to be attracted by the meal. The aroma of the meal will not make you eat the food if you still retain a sense of your humanity. And so that basically is the issue. We have persons who should be able to engage us, not those who are doing what they are doing on the basis of things that are hoggish. Do not again forget, in the social media, there are things that have been attributed to Mr. President, that Obasanjo had asked for X, Y, Z. And that was the same problem Jonathan had. For as long as you do my bidding, you are a fine fellow. So as long as you do my bidding, you are a fine fellow. So the very moment you say, Daddy, I think I'm a full-grown man now, I want to exercise some relative independence, then Obasanjo says you are bad. So these basically are the issues. These basically are the issues. And if, for example, you say, Buhari, you have not done well, he reserves the right, of course, to become critical. But let him not assume the position where he dictates to Nigeria and say, I will find a leader for you. He found the Yaradua for us after him. When Yaradua left, he found Jonathan for us. And all of the persons he had found for us, openly he tore his PDP card and said, I would rather go to jail. He said that in 2015 under Buhari than to allow Jonathan to continue. So if he has, over time, consistently giving us persons, and he turns around to say, oh, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong person, why are we going to...
Why don't we leave the messenger and focus on the message? The message that he presented. Aren't there elements there that we could hold on to and engage government to be more accountable, live up to responsibility, live up to promises made?
Of course we could do that. Of course we could do that. And that explains why I said all that Mr. President ought to be doing now is not to respond or react to what Obasanjo is saying. Is to begin to respond. And unfortunately, that's what the information minister is beginning to do. Oh, we have done this. We met X power. We have generated this. We are unable to evacuate because of X, Y, Z reason. There are a number of things Mr. President did from the very beginning which he did not do rightly. Because if those who didn't make the first system, don't forget, Okonjo-Iweala recently wrote a book. In that book, he said, my mother was kidnapped. Not because the people were looking for money, because those who did the kidnapping were richer than the state. They were saying, go on air, announce your resignation, because he won't pay money to the oil cartel. Because as far as he was concerned, it didn't make sense paying that kind of money. Why should I pay on rent the kind of money that can give me a permanent accommodation? Because if I keep paying, it doesn't translate to me owning the house for life. And so that became her own policy. And they said, no, you don't have to fix this. Unfortunately, Buhari came. It was this same set of persons he had inherited, not finding the courage. And so the refineries are not working. It doesn't matter whatever story is being told. They are just not working. Power was, PHCN, whatever name it went by, was sold to those who didn't have competence. Some of the CEOs of the discos today were persons who were decimal failure in the different theater where they had operated. Those who had worked in the bank were colossal failure, who ought to be behind the bars. They were the ones running. It was on the basis of patronage. So if you didn't do a dislocation at the point you needed to do so, you run into problem. And again, Buhari, for example, yes, he has said, come challenge me. What he's probably priding himself on is the fact that I am not corrupt. But one single individual who is not corrupt is not an institution. He has ministers around him who peculate public resources. He does. And again, he has this issue of once I trust you, which was the problem he had with the former secretary. When again, it depends on the quality of channel of information that he had and how these pieces of information were being processed. Because the minister, the secretary to government of federation was cleared by Buhari when the Senate insisted that the man is rotting. He was cleared. He said, no, the AGF was the one who headed the committee that cleared him. And when there was a persistence and the guy was traveling overseas for medical treatment, he told the vice president, say, okay, please let us re-examine this issue. The same AGF stood there. So I don't know the facts they came into that they didn't have, for which
initially
they said the man should go. Because if they were asking him to go, even when it was still obvious that he was not corrupt, they were unfair to him. They were unfair to him. And if it is that we later discovered that he was corrupt, then the AGF needed to explain to us what were those new facts. Unfortunately, he's still in the system. And so those are issues. Yes, we say, yes, there are issues. When we said we went into reception, we pride ourselves that, oh, in no distant time we left, we were able to snap out of reception. I said, there was absolutely nothing to celebrate. Because we went into reception because the price of crude oil nosedived. And so when the price picked up, we were said to have come. But that didn't translate into stimulating economy in a way and manner that it is buffered against whatever is the vicissitude that will arise from fluctuation in the price of crude. Okay. So these are issues. And we have people who obviously, for him as a coach or as the head of a team, to be comfortable with his array of ministers for 3 solid years, give me serious
Exactly
concern.
the question I was going to ask here.
Because there was a need to rejig.
Okay, there was a need to rejig.
Obviously.
But that doesn't look like it's coming so soon.
It's not even likely going to come. And even if it comes, it's like...
So what are those specific ministries you think that rejigging, or I mean, is it something that would have been a holistic rejigging, or maybe there are some specific ministries that should have...
frankly speaking, there ought to be a holistic. The finance minister has no business being there. It's not to come and speak English. In my opinion, she has not demonstrated capacity to do the things to engineer the kind of policy that will stimulate the economy to grow. She should have gone. And so many others should go. So many others should have gone.
Yeah, but don't you think that whatever these guys are doing is founded on the blueprint of the present administration?
No,
shouldn't we start the analysis from that point?
I don't think it's the blueprint, so much so as that Mr. President does not seem to appreciate that, yes, it is true we are practicing democracy. That does not seriously enfeeble him the way he has sounded. If you looked at that script, he said, when I was in the military, we just carried them, threw them into prisons. There are some persons, yes, you don't need to carry to throw into prison. Your ministers, for example. I give you one clear example. Security is a serious challenge. The fight against corruption had been challenged from different fronts by persons whom Mr. President does not need any clearance to deal with. There is inter-agency rivalry between the EFCC and the DSS. All of these persons are appointees of Mr. President. And all that they do had gone to undermine this administration. So what are they doing there? So these are departments who say, yes, he's slow. When you look at killings that have taken place, whether they are politically motivated or not, what is the DSS doing? It is to help find out who are those who are behind this. Bring them to book. So when somebody goes to the UK or goes to the United Nations to say it was because of the proliferation, the collapse of the state of Libya, that hands found themselves into the sub-Africa continent, and that is whatever. We should have capacity to respond to all of this. And again, do not forget, in every war situation, those who fight the war and those against whom the war is fought are both victims. There are beneficiaries. No war survives for 1 hour if there are no beneficiaries. And usually you don't find them in the theater of war. And it is in the best interest of the top brass in the military that the struggle continues.
If you just join us, you're on to Road to 2019 on ITV Satellite, Channel 107, Go TV, Channel 130 on Star Times, and on live stream at www.itvradio.nigeria.com/live. Well, just on the verge of capping it up on the program for today and for this week. Remember, the focus has been President Muhammadu Buhari's response to criticisms in recent times. And of course, my guest has been Malam Nuruddin Asunuge. He's an Islamic scholar, a public affairs commentator. He's also a lawyer, a regular on the program. Just before we go, on the road to 2019, INEC has told us that They now have a total of 68 political parties. I don't know if all of them will be able to field a candidate for 2019. What do you make of this number?
Well, when you look at them, it takes us back to history. How late Bola Ige of blessed memory described the 5 political parties, the 5 leprous fingers and all that. Because when you look at whether PDP is in disarray, perhaps what APC had feared, for which it wanted to paper over cracks, for which they were talking about tenure elongation, was to make less visible the disharmony within. And when you find the congresses that were held across the states of the Federation, the parallel congresses were held, and you will be expecting that there will be echoes and vibration and revibration coming from all of this. Why were people struggling to hold on to the jugular of the party? Why are they doing that? It is about survival, not of the Nigerian state. And so once you find persons who are like this, who will continue for a very long time to swim in the ocean of putridity, because people are not interested in power for the purpose for which power ought to be sought in the first place. Okay. They are interested for the gratification of selfish proclivities. And so that's what you find across board. It makes it unhealthy. The tides, the storm, do not portend anything good. And when you talk about the whole issue of what INEC says, whether they will feed candidates or they will not feed candidates, we'll be talking about the quality. Now, what people will be looking at is, oh, President Buhari, who is that candidate that will be able to stand and defeat him? Not on the basis of the quality he has, but the capacity he has to do dirty things to make all of that happen.
By virtue of being in control of state apparatus?
Apparatus or resources to manipulate.
Okay.
The capacity for violence. The capacity for violence. The capacity to compromise the umpires. Do not forget what Mantu had said. He didn't need to tell us this because we had always known that that is obviously what happens. The capacity to compromise the umpires. So,
but that doesn't seem to have changed over the years, even recent times.
What changed?
This whole capacity to manipulate the system to your advantage, particularly the power of incumbency.
But no, of course, you see, again, it depends. It depends on who is fighting the fellow who is incumbent. Don't forget that Jonathan, with due respect to him, you could say he's a gentleman, a euphemism for cowardice. After he had left, there was the lamentation. Obama and others said I should go. They said I should go. So he got the message. And so probably they painted the picture of what had happened to Gbagbo. And so he didn't want to do what Gbagbo did, and so he pulled out. And again, do not fail to appreciate the fact that he was again being sabotaged by those who were his men he had relied upon. He repeatedly said, I didn't trust at a point the leadership of my party, that particularly the chairman of my party sold out. And so when you had all of those challenges, you were not just doing a battle against the external, you were doing battle against the internal. Okorocha, for example, in Imo State, cried out he said, all that happened in Imo during the primaries was because I said Oyegun should go. So Oyegun was the one who set up the structure that ran the primary, and so it's not as if I'm not popular and that kind of stuff. So people will always, how correct or that is not what I'm saying here. I'm just saying these are issues over which, you see, the individual who is involved, whether one likes it or not, in the final analysis, what this points out to is that, yes, our will, no matter what we feel to the contrary, are limited. And they operate within a destiny or destinies over which we do not have absolute capacity to regulate. To that extent, they are unlimited against our limited will.
I'll be back in a moment to just take a final word from you. But if you just join us, it's Road to 2019 on ITV Satellite, Channel 107 on GoTV, Channel 130 on Star Times. We'll take a short break. Yes, we'll take a short break. When we return, it will be time to quality wrap on the program Road to 2019 on ITV Satellite. Join us again.
As the race for 2019 elections heats up, Join Sonny Duke Okosun every Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. as he brings you profiles of key actors, insights, and in-depth analysis on the issues as they unfold on the road to 2019. The stage is set as the political gladiators try to outwit and maneuver their opponents in the politics or politricks on the road to 2019 with Sonny Duke Okosun. Tune to ITV on GoTV channel 107 and Star Times channel 130 every Friday 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Road to 2019 on ITV, a must watch.
Thanks again for staying with us on the program Road to 2019. My guest, Malam Nuruddin Asonoje, is still very much in the studio. Now, you mentioned a while ago the state congresses held across the country, which, of course, to a large extent has been blighted with reports of parallel congresses. This is what is heralding the convention of the ruling party. Are there major pullouts from it in terms of impacts on the convention and then, of course, on the road to 2019?
Well, because a number of the actors are hungry people, they are not people driven by principles, you will not expect plenty of compromises, because for a number of them it will be much better that we remain to cover our dirty tracks. Because whether one likes it or not, people have argued, and I say that to a large extent makes some sense. People have argued that if you belong, even when you are being prosecuted for corruption, the approach is milder. It's milder. You know, a number of persons have been asked, come and account for the funds that were given to you to run an election. We know as a fact that parties will generate money for election. It is usually not the business of those who get the money to prosecute election to be asking from the party what was the source of this money. And if the source was dirty, tell me one party whose source was immaculate. But if I must rubbish you to silence you, then I will begin to beat the drums of corruption and wanting to do X, Y, Z, just to deafen you, to silence, to quiet you, so that you no longer are strong or emboldened to begin to look at the issues the way you would have looked at them. You are coward. And so we have seen all of that happen. So a number of them are not likely going to pull out. Pull out where? Do not forget there was the new PDP that said we were going to leave. Members of the new PDP were fighting themselves.
They gave an ultimatum.
And nobody negotiated with them on their own. They said, we are not going. This one said, we are not going. And so as the crowd was thinning down, they came back and said, we are meeting with the leadership. Safe landing, face saving, and that kind of stuff. They are not likely going to go anywhere. All of those who were in PDP, who crossed over to APC, are not there on the basis of principles. And if the pendulum swings tomorrow, you can be sure
the same will happen.
That they will move in the same direction. It's only possible because we have not developed a strong political culture. When an individual tells me that Buhari is an honest person, I say, yes, I accept that from you. But I would have preferred a situation where you begin to say, this is the institution he has built that will make whatever you say he is to survive him. Supposing he's gone, we are going to return to where we were, or to worse state. All that you have today is that people are pretending. And he's not able to build that until and unless the Nigerian people say it is our project. We are not going to accept this anymore. You can't steal our money and you get chieftaincy title. You can't steal our money, the university gives you honorary degree. You can't steal our money, our infrastructures are dilapidated. You can't steal our money and we become individual governments in our own, providing security, providing road. I navigated this road to this place, I navigated my area to this place, going through a road that is increasingly becoming bad. Each one of us in that neighborhood paid 10,000 naira to do the grading. Every other road, including the Omore Road, Those who refuse to provide money are following that road. And so it's going about, it's deteriorating faster than it ought to do. And so we are thinking about how do we, in addition, because more and more vehicles are following the road because it's about the only good road in that entire neighborhood. And because more and more vehicles are following, it has exposed that area. It is like it's naked. And so we are reinforcing security to prevent people who say, oh, this area exists, who will come to terrorize people either by the day or night. And so these are things government ordinarily should do. We are beginning to do that. And we'll continue along that direction for as long as we do not say, this is our project. We want to own it, and we are ready to defend it. Every other society that you find that is thick on the basis of the quality of the persons who are there. So if you are representing us, you are representative. Representation should not translate to mean denial of participation. We will participate in an indirect form by getting you to become accountable to us. Not that you come and donate peanuts. I mean, you see, it is so disgusting. You come to our institutions of learning, apart from the fact that infrastructure are in a state of decay because of corruption, you find that somebody doles out peanuts. And those are the fellows that are being celebrated for doling out peanuts. He's your representative. You say, oh, he's a fine representative. Somebody comes and gives you street light. And you say a beautiful representative, and the fellow drives the kind of vehicle. These were fellows who were eking out a miserable existence before they went there to represent you. And you can't go to school. They do nothing about your inability to go to school. Because the schools, we say no proper funding. Our hospitals are in a state of dilapidation. Today, God save the Queen. A friend of mine said my wife was in labor. He had to go to a private hospital because the university teaching hospital here is grounded. And why is it so? Because you have persons who will not respond to issues objectively. You say, oh, no, why will you pay nurses and doctors the same salary? I say, why would you pay nurses and nurses the same salary? Why will you pay doctors and doctors the same salary? Why would you pay a community doctor the same salary you pay a neurosurgeon? They don't do the same job. Why would you pay a nurse who is in a neuro ward the same salary you pay a nurse who is in public health? They don't do the same work. The one in neuro, whatever, comes home emaciated, not because she's HIV positive, but because of the quality of, the job he does. Others are robust. They do no job. They are not challenged. Somebody is in clinic, you pay this. I said, no, there should be salary differential on the basis of the work you do. But those who should have addressed this issue are not in the least interested. And so we are where we are. And so the fellow gets. I traveled on a particular day from Abuja to Benin. I traveled. Somebody I saw before we boarded the plane. I said, these are the bourgeois in society. And he was sitting behind me. By what standard, he's a multi-billionaire in dollars. I don't want to call the name. He's won a number of United Nations awards. He sat behind me, meaning he was in the economy class.
And you were in the business class?
No, we were both in the
economic class.
For the talakawas, people of us who are privileged.
I'm not sure there's any talakawas that will be on the plane.
No. So you see, well, maybe somebody was paying for that.
Okay.
If you said, come and do this for me, and you paid.
Yes,
so that was what
I get it. I get it.
So that never changed my status. Now, I traveled another time with some persons who are members of the National Assembly. They were in the first class. Those persons I traveled with, one of them included Professor Sage, who was in the economy class, the class of people like me who will get people to pay for them. They were, and one of them who owns a microfinance bank right, left, and center, who was in that same class, are persons who could pay them their salaries. But they knew what the value of money is and how money should be spent. But these are the fellows destroying the corridors of power. And so what do you get? Abuse. Persons who will travel out of the shores of this country, carry a whole village to go and do a birthday party. And they come tomorrow, give you wheelbarrow, give you whatever you say is economic empowerment.
I heard a story of a commissioner who gave polish and Anyway, I think major pullout from the conversation is that until Nigerians take ownership of the Nigerian project,
we are not going anywhere.
Well, that's our tailout on this week's edition of Road to 2019 on ITV Satellite. Malanuruddin Asonogi, it's always a delight to have you here.
Thank you for having
when
me.
you're here like this, it's like you have like 10 people on just one program. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much. Well, that's the program for today and for this week. Big thanks to Tony Etim behind all the operational equipment just to ensure that we're able to get this program to you on satellite. My name is Sonny Duke Okosun. I'll be with you again next week, Friday, when we shall bring you another very exciting discussion on Road to 2019. Till then, remember, until you become an owner of the Nigerian project, we can make any meaningful impact or development as a nation. And that means on the road to 2019, you must get your PVC. Bye for now.